Hello out there in the void. Phoebe Rizzo back, and a little change of pace. Actually made it out to a theater for a change. So, that's a new experience. Oh, at least good to get back to it kind of thing. So, I actually did that yesterday, and I made it a point not to record until today. Because having an enjoyable experience around the movie could also, or often, make me be a little more lenient on a movie than I otherwise would be. And has probably tainted a couple of my reviews in the past, but I thought it'd be best to let this one settle before I actually got my thoughts on it. Meditate a little. Let it ruminate. And I still overall enjoyed it, but probably didn't bump it up the little bit extra I might have otherwise. So, what did I see? A Quiet Place Part 2. As if you didn't know by reading the title of this one. Anyway. So, I haven't actually reviewed A Quiet Place on here. I've lately been trying not to do too many sequels before I actually get the originals out for reviews, but this is just the one screening that ended up working out for me, so here we are. But I have seen A Quiet Place. I really enjoyed A Quiet Place. So, I'll eventually get a review on that one at some point in the future. But, so this one, it was alright. So, this one picks up, well, at first it starts essentially flashed back to, well, when the whole event happens, which we didn't actually do in the first one. We were already dropped pretty square into the middle of things, and then jumped even further ahead. This one actually starts us back on day one, when it all goes down. And that was an intense sequence. Very well done. Then it jumps to pretty much exactly when the last movie ended. And goes from there. So, direct follow-up. Now, this one picks up with the characters, now with Bebby, realizing they can't stay where they were at any longer, or because everything pretty much went up in flames, so they set off. Now, throughout the first one, the main character was essentially, well, John Krasinski's character was lighting some signal fires, and occasionally you could see a response fire. So essentially letting people know they were still alive. And now with their place is pretty much no longer habitable, they head off towards this fire that they've seen. Now, if you're not familiar with A Quiet Place, because I didn't really touch on it, it's pretty much some sort of alien monsters that hunt by sound. You make a loud noise, they'll zero right in on you. But otherwise, they're blind, armored, killing machines. Looked like almost like a miniature Cloverfield monster. Anyway. They set off through the then through the overgrown cityscape, trying to be as quiet as they can, and, well, now I'm trying to recall the characters' names, which is actually a little bit tricky in this one because, well, just like the first one, the movie doesn't have a lot of dialogue. It's a very quiet film. Since, well, the characters are doing all they can not to make too much sounds. But, let's see, Evelyn was the mother, and, she's pretty much, I will say I was wondering how they were going to work up having a baby in this instance, but they worked out a pretty good system of having it in this little, effectively soundproof carrier with an oxygen tank to help get it through. And with her son Marcus and daughter Reagan. Now, Reagan in the first one was shown to be deaf, and she has a hearing aid that lets her hear a little bit, but they keep John Krasinski's character Lee was experimenting, trying to make it actually work better, with mixed results. Anyway, in the last one, I was discovered that the feedback from her hearing aid with a microphone and a radio thing could essentially cause some seizures in the monsters to allow them to become vulnerable. So they head off and encounter another survivor, but in doing so, the kid Marcus gets crippled, and they essentially have to hole up with this other survivor, Emmett, who really doesn't want them there. He was a friend of the family before, but, well, he's lost everything and just wants to be left alone. However, they pick up a radio broadcast, and Reagan, she was pretty much the lead throughout both the other ones, the younger deaf girl, is determined to set off to find this radio broadcast and, one, find survivors, and two, use the radio to blast out a signal to try to fight back. Well, her whole family is against it, so she sneaks out. In which case, Evelyn, played by Emily Blunt, convinces Emmett, who's played by Cillian Murphy, to go bring her back. And from that point on, once those two reconnect, it pretty much becomes The Last of Us. Then determined young girl with a weapon, older guy who's lost a kid who doesn't want anything else to do with kids and family, stuck together, trying to survive, and the monsters are making clicking sounds. It was very much The Last of Us at that point. Not in a bad way, but the comparisons can't be ignored. And goes from there, them trying to reach, that point, the place where they think people are holed up. Meanwhile, Evelyn needs to sneak away for some more air canisters, and Marcus, who's hobbled, has to take care of the baby. So essentially we have three different mini plots that are watching here, with quest for their supplies, quest to find survivors, and take care of baby. Now, Emily Blunt really has much more of a minor role in this one. Her story in this one's a lot more downplayed. They're more focusing on Reagan, and then to a lesser extent Marcus. But her part is fine. No problems there. The standout is definitely Millicent Simmons, again reprising her role as Reagan. She's the standout in this one. Her and Cillian Murphy play off each other really well, and their story is definitely the most interesting. Then as for the other kid, Marcus, I want to slap that boy. I can forgive the screaming when he steps in a bear trap. Okay, fine. He's a kid, he's got very badly injured, and can't stop screaming in pain. Okay, I can forgive that. But everything else he does makes me want to shake this boy. First off, Reagan tells only him that she wants to go off to try to, well, save the family and perhaps even fight back. And he's determined to talk her out of it, and if not, he's going to go tell Mom. So, when she sneaks away, he does that, and then after Evelyn needs to go for supplies, he's trying to do everything he can to talk her into not going, but they need more oxygen for the baby, and he needs some pain meds. So, despite him being in a very secure bunker, he's playing the paranoid kid who's can't and do the one thing that's being asked of him. I can forgive that. It's annoying, but I can forgive that. The problem I have is after she's gone, he goes up for no reason. I think he's trying to look out to see if he can spot his mother, because, wow, he's a mama's boy. So he leaves the baby alone, with oxygen that's clearly running low. Not that he's paying any attention to that. And goes up, hobbles up a ladder to get to a higher vantage point to do a lookout thing. And then he starts exploring, scares himself, and makes a whole bunch of noise. So he attracts the monsters. He has to quickly hobble down to where the kid is. Now, in the lower area where they've been staying, there's like this furnace, I think, that they pretty much have been crawling into and closing to act as a very soundproof shield. But it can't be opened from the inside, and there's a limited amount of air. So when you go in, you have a stopwatch that tells you how long you can be in there, and you have to be careful of how you enter it, essentially putting a towel down to block it from latching. So he takes the baby, jumps in there, and it seals. So the baby's almost out of oxygen already, and now it's in a spot where they both could be running out. This kid is doing everything he can to mess up. It's only tense because you're worried about the baby. I was not worried about this kid. He was... Everything about him, his problems, could have been really avoided if he just did what his mother asked him and just stayed put. They try to give him a redemption of fighting back moment later on, but by then it's like, no. This kid didn't earn it. I won't go into too many details otherwise about how Reagan's journey goes, because that's the heart of the movie, and I don't want to spoil too much on that regard, but they're doing great. Solid acting, the effects are still good, and the continued use of ASL was useful, even though she was paired with someone who can't understand it as much, so they still work out pretty well. I will say this movie was a little bit, I guess, louder than the first one, but I don't think it could really have been avoided since they're a lot more traveling. But it did lack the punch of the eerie silence that the first one really had. So, I was debating on where to give this one. I was leaning on almost giving it a 4, but that was the post-theater experience, so I think this one's really only netting me a 3. Mostly because that kid was such a detraction. Everyone else, I'm with you. That one kid, no. I understand some characters have to occasionally do stupid things to keep horror movies going, but there's a line. This kid was way over it. And like when every moment like that is this one kid. Yeah. 3 MacGuffins, still worth seeing. And I definitely recommend seeing it in theaters. The sound system in there alone makes this really plays up the silence, so I do recommend that. It was very nice to be back at a theater. I hope to go again soon. But I think that's where I'm going to leave this one. I do recommend checking it out, despite its attractions. It definitely seemed to help continue the story that was set up in the first one. I'm kind of hoping that they don't continue too much more, because I don't really think much more is needed in this story. And anything else might just be drawing it out unnecessarily, so I'm hoping it's just 2 and done. I don't know, I haven't heard anything, but that's where I'm at on it. Don't overstay your welcome. First one was great, second one's alright. Don't overdo it. Have a good night, everyone.